Hi, my name's Marla, and last Thanksgiving, my parents handed me a paper plate and said, "She's used to scraps," before sending me, and my kids, to eat in the garage. No table, no seat, not even a glance from anyone who shared my blood. But what hurt more wasn't that moment. It was realizing it wasn't the first time. They'd been editing me out for years, cropping me from photos, leaving me out of group texts, erasing my name from a house I helped build. And just when I thought I'd disappear quietly, a woman in a limo pulled up and asked for me. By name. Why would a stranger know my worth, when my own family didn't? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have done what I did next? I should have known the moment we pulled into Brielle's driveway. The Range Rovers gleamed under the Charleston sun like showroom trophies, lined up perfectly. Laughter spilled through the half-open windows, not loud or wild, just polished, curated, like everything my sister touched. I parked in the shade, not because I wanted to, but because I wasn't about to take one of the spots near the entrance. Those were for people who were expected. I'd learned not to mistake a holiday invitation for actual inclusion. "Ready?" I asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Rowan nodded. He was 12 now, taller than I remembered him becoming, still growing into his quiet strength. Opal clutched a pie dish with both hands, her knuckles white. She was trying too hard to smile. "They'll be happy we brought dessert," I said, though no one had asked us to. We rang the bell. Nothing. I knocked. Still nothing. "Just go in," Rowan muttered. "They never answer." He was right. The door opened with a creak that should have been fixed years ago, but wasn't. Probably too small to matter in a house filled with marble counters and heated floors. Inside, warmth. Not the emotional kind. Just the physical glow of candles, lighting, too many bodies in expensive fabrics. Brielle spotted us immediately, her lips forming something that wasn't quite a smile. "Oh, you made it." Her voice carried just enough volume for others to hear. "We're a little tight on space this year." There was no hug, no, "Let me take your coat," or "What a beautiful pie." She glanced at the casserole Opal held and tilted her head. "You can set that in the kitchen. I think we've already got 3. My mouth opened to respond. But what was I going to say? That we'd made it from scratch? That Opal mashed the sweet potatoes herself? That I couldn't afford the pecans, but bought them anyway? No one cared. I nudged Opal gently, and we moved toward the kitchen. No one really turned to look at us. The hallway smelled like rosemary and lemon cleaner, cold, like the kind you use in homes that are too perfect to touch. The dining room was already set. Long table, 10 chairs, 3 booster seats, name cards with embossed lettering. Ours weren't there. I searched once, then again, slower. Nothing. "Mom!" Opal whispered. "Where do we sit?" Before I could answer, Brielle appeared again, this time holding 3 paper plates. "We set up the garage," she said lightly. "It's quieter out there. More your speed, right?" And then she added, too cheerfully, "She's used to scraps." Every conversation in the room dropped. I felt the weight of their silence crash down like a stone. Eyes darted away. Someone coughed. My mother took a sip from her wine glass and looked past me, toward the fireplace. I didn't flinch, didn't cry. I just took the plates from Brielle's hands. "Thanks," I said. "We'll get settled." The garage was exactly what I'd expected. Concrete floor, folding table, 1 chair, 1 crate, 1 stool that still had a price sticker on it. A roll of paper towels sat in the middle, like a joke no one bothered to finish. Rowan sat silently, his shoulders squared. Opal stood by the crate, hesitant. "Why are we eating here? Did we do something wrong?" "No," I said. "No, baby, we didn't." She climbed onto the crate, balancing her dish on her knees. I passed her a plastic fork. Rowan took his plate without a word. The food came in mismatched Tupperware. Brielle's nanny, or maybe the housekeeper, dropped it off with a forced smile. No turkey platter, just slices. No gravy, just dry mashed potatoes. And of course, no second helpings. I wanted to say something, anything, but if I opened my mouth, it would crack. And I'd had enough of crying behind closed doors while others sipped wine inside. Instead, I picked up my phone, took a photo of the paper plate, not for sympathy, not for proof, just to remind myself. I texted the picture to myself with a single caption, "Next time, remember this." So I stayed quiet, not for their comfort, but to protect what was mine. I watched Opal push her food around the plate with her fork, the paper bending under the pressure. Rowan sat across from her, hunched slightly, chewing slowly like the act itself felt like a chore. I could hear the hum of the dishwasher through the garage wall, followed by muffled laughter. Brielle's laugh, unmistakably sharp, followed by someone's clinking glass. A few minutes passed like that, maybe longer. Long enough for the draft under the side door to feel like winter itself had settled inside the room. Then, someone opened the interior door. Judith, my mother. She didn't step in. She stayed just at the threshold, her silhouette framed by warm light. She held a small gift box wrapped in gold paper. Her eyes skimmed over the garage setup like she was glancing into a broom closet, not a space where her daughter and grandchildren were eating dinner. "Brielle wanted me to give this to you," she said, setting the box down on the edge of the table. "She said it was from both of you." I didn't correct her. I knew exactly what it was. I'd bought that scarf myself a week ago, picked it out, paid cash. I even wrote a small note and slid it under the ribbon. "Happy Thanksgiving. I know you don't say it, but I still hope you're proud." But the card was gone. Probably tucked in the trash under the kitchen sink with the pie Opal baked. Judith didn't wait for a thank you. She turned and disappeared back into the warmth. The door clicked shut behind her. "She gave your gift away?" Rowan asked, voice low but steady. I nodded once. Opal's brow furrowed. "Why would she do that?" "They didn't forget, baby," I said gently. "They just pretend I'm not part of this when it's convenient." That night, after we got home, after I'd tucked them into their beds and double-checked the locks, I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages. There was a group chat named Thanksgiving 23. I hadn't been added. Of course not. I remembered hearing someone say earlier, "Didn't Marla get the memo about the dress code?" That's when it clicked. There had been coordination, a theme, inside jokes, a full plan, and I wasn't even a footnote. The next morning, while making oatmeal for the kids, I opened a blank note and started typing, "Start documenting. Every time they rewrite the story without you in it." I thought about my wedding invitation that never made it to Aunt Carla, even though I mailed it 3 weeks ahead. About how no one showed up to Rowan's school play, even though it was on the calendar. About my birthday cake that said Marta instead of Marla. And Judith had laughed, "It's close enough." It wasn't accidental. It never had been. It was just refined. Invisibilizing someone isn't loud. It's quiet, practiced, polished over time, until it looks like etiquette instead of cruelty. Later that evening, I saw my cousin Lila near the dessert table, chatting with a few others. She caught my eye and said, "Oh, hey! Were you ever added to the planning thread? The whole thing happened on Facebook this year. Brielle was stressing out about headcount." I smiled. Not too wide. "Nope," I said. "But that's okay. I usually find out where I'm supposed to be once I'm already there." Lila blinked. "Oh, well, you know how things get lost online sometimes." "Sure they do." Before heading back to the garage, I slipped into the hallway to grab more napkins. The family room was full of wine and flashbulbs. Someone had set up a ring light for pictures. Brielle stood beside the fireplace, posing with Judith and the other grandkids. Rowan and Opal weren't in the photo. Neither was I. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask why. I already knew. That night, as we drove home through the dim streets of Charleston, Opal sat quietly in the back seat, hugging the pie dish we'd brought. It was untouched. Rowan looked out the window and said, "It's not little, our apartment." "I know," I said. "It's not fancy, but it's ours." I reached back and touched his knee, just briefly. "Exactly. We don't need fancy. We need true." When we got inside, I kicked off my boots, shrugged off my jacket, and sat on the floor for a moment. Just to breathe. Just to feel the difference between that house and this one. I opened my phone again and typed a new line into my notes. They want me edited, but I'm writing in ink, because when your name is spoken like an afterthought, it's time to rewrite your place. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was crying or upset. No. It was the kind of wakefulness that settles when your mind's done asking questions and starts taking notes. I laid in bed, listening to the radiator click, Rowan's steady breathing from the next room, and Opal's light, rhythmic turning in her sleep. By morning, I'd written 3 entries in my phone, each one documenting the kinds of moments that don't make headlines but never leave your ribs. We returned to Brielle's house later that day for what she called leftover lunch. Same crowd, same table. The main difference was the tension in my own chest, heavier now but strangely clearer. While everyone else filled their plates in the kitchen, I stayed back with Opal and Rowan. We waited until the line thinned. I didn't feel like fighting for a spot at the buffet. That's when I heard it. "Heck, just give her what's left. She's used to scraps," my father said casually, while handing a container of stuffing to Brielle. He wasn't even trying to be quiet. The stuffing wasn't what stung. It was the tone. Like I wasn't standing 3 feet away. Like I was an anecdote at a dinner party, not his daughter. Like my children didn't have ears and dignity of their own. I froze mid-step. Rowan looked at me, not panicked, just bracing. Opal blinked at the floor, as if staring hard enough might make it open and swallow us. I didn't say a word. I just reached out and took the container, calmly, like the staff would. Which apparently was the role I'd been assigned this year. As I turned to walk away, Brielle gave me a half smile. Not warm, not even sarcastic. Just satisfied. Later that afternoon, I helped clear some of the paper plates and cups from the porch. Most folks had shifted inside. I stayed out of the way. Old habit. That's when Tamron approached. Brielle's friend, wore too much perfume, and talked like she narrated her own life in hashtags. She spotted me stacking plates and grinned. "Oh, I thought you were one of the helpers. Could you grab more ice from the downstairs fridge?" There was no malice in her voice. That's what made it worse. I turned to her and said calmly, "I'm not part of the staff, but I've been treated like one for years." She blinked, smiled awkwardly, and walked off without another word. Brielle stood nearby, watching. She didn't laugh. She didn't apologize. She just raised her glass toward me slightly, like she was toasting a punchline only she understood. I didn't flinch. I didn't fold. I simply turned and walked to the garage, where I knew our seats were still waiting. We stayed for the family game hour, which was apparently a new tradition this year. Charades, group trivia, some board games for the kids. I wasn't asked to play, not even once. While collecting discarded cups, I bumped into Kellen, Brielle's youngest. He was eating a cookie, face sticky, and completely unaware that his little mouth would soon deliver the deepest cut of the day. He looked up and said, laughing, "Mom says you never made anything of your life. Is that why you don't come for Christmas?" I stood still, stunned not by what he said, but how easily it came out. No hesitation, no malice. Just truth, as told to him. Opal was standing behind me. I turned to check her face. She looked confused, not because she didn't understand the sentence, but because she understood it too well. I crouched beside her and took her hand. "It's not true," I said quietly. "Some people just repeat things they've heard, not things they know." She didn't reply. She nodded, though, a slow, processing nod. I should have felt rage, or shame, or maybe heartbreak. But I didn't. What I felt was Done. Done being polite so others wouldn't feel guilty. Done being edited out of the story they tell when it suits them. Later, after the sun started dipping and the garage began cooling down again, I found a spare napkin near the paper towel roll. I pulled out a pen from my purse and wrote 3 words in the corner. Not this year. I folded it, tucked it into my jacket pocket. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to beg for a seat. They had shown me exactly who they were. And now, for the first time, I was listening without excuse. I looked at Rowan. He gave me a small nod, like he already knew. Opal leaned into my side, her eyes heavy but calm. Maybe next Thanksgiving, they'll wonder where we went. Maybe someone will look around and ask, "Has anyone heard from Marla?" And if they do, I hope they sit with the silence that follows. So I decided to stop disappearing. The garage had grown colder, but not unkind. After we left that afternoon, I let the kids watch something soft on TV while I folded laundry and reheated leftover spaghetti. Nothing fancy, just something warm and filling. Something that didn't come out of a foil tray or a casserole dish someone else picked out for us. That night, I sat on the couch in silence. I stared at the paper plate still in my purse from the garage. I hadn't thrown it away. I couldn't. Not yet. It wasn't trash. It was proof. The next day, we returned to Brielle's house for what she called the real Thanksgiving, as if the one we already lived through had just been a rehearsal. She texted, "Bring the kids. Mom wants to do the slideshow." We arrived just before sunset. The house was lit up again, golden and loud. The kind of loud that didn't leave room for quiet people to speak. I took off my coat and folded it over my arm. Judith gave me a tight smile before turning back to the oven. The family room had been rearranged to face a blank wall. A portable projector stood on a small table, wires snaking behind furniture. Judith called for everyone to sit. "We put together something special," she said, glass in hand. "A trip through time." The lights dimmed. Photos began to flicker. Snapshots of holidays past, ski trips, recitals, Brielle's graduation, her kids' first birthdays. Everyone laughed at the same moments, gasped at the same baby pictures. And I waited. I waited for my face. I waited for my children's faces. There I was, once, barely visible in the corner of a blurry 4th of July shot. I recognized the shirt I wore that day only because I remembered spilling mustard on it. There were no captions, no context, just flashes of a life that had apparently continued without me. Next to me, Opal whispered, "Were we not here back then?" I swallowed hard. "We were, just not where the camera pointed." She nodded slowly, like she'd just learned something adults don't usually teach out loud. After the lights came back on, people moved toward dessert. I followed Judith into the kitchen, taking my time. "Hey," I said softly. "The slideshow was nice. I didn't realize we weren't part of the story." Judith didn't turn around. She was spooning whipped cream onto a pie like it needed to be perfect for the camera. "It's not about you, Marla. Let's not make a scene. Tonight is for Brielle." I nodded. "Got it. I didn't realize existing was making a scene." She looked at me then, tight-lipped, but not sorry. Back in the garage, Rowan scooted his chair closer to mine. No one said a word. But the air had shifted. The unspoken pact, me pretending they weren't erasing us if I smiled hard enough, was gone. Opal pulled a napkin toward her and began drawing. A stick figure version of herself, another for Rowan, and one with short curly hair she labeled Mom. There were no cousins, no grandparents. "Can I put it on the fridge?" she asked. Yeah, baby. You can." As the evening wound down, I watched people pack up leftovers they didn't offer us. Brielle's husband laughed loudly about something corporate. Judith posed for photos with other grandkids, arms perfectly positioned like a pageant queen. I wasn't asked to be in any of them. I'd stopped hoping. When we got home, I tucked the kids in early. They were full, not from food, but from the weight of being on guard. I stayed in the kitchen and opened my phone. I looked again at the napkin in my jacket pocket, the one I'd written on yesterday. Not this year. Then I opened notes and typed, "They won't notice you leave, but they'll be loud when you're gone." I stared at it for a while. Then I deleted it. I typed something else instead. "Start again, but not here." I stared at those words for a long time before locking my phone and heading to bed. They don't want the truth. They just want the version of the story where I vanish quietly, where I'm generous in my absence, easy to explain. But I'm not fading. I'm choosing. And I stepped through, with no intention of looking back. It was somewhere between folding the last blanket and reaching for the light switch in the garage when I saw them. Headlights, cutting clean across the driveway like they had business being there. Not a visitor's SUV or one of Brielle's smug carpool moms. No. This was different. Black, long, quiet. A limousine. I stood still, half expecting it to reverse and drive away, realizing they had the wrong house. But instead, it kept rolling, slow and deliberate, past the front walkway, curving around the side, toward the garage. Inside the house, silhouettes shifted behind the window panes. Curtains moved. I imagined Judith craning her neck with that same pinched curiosity she wore when the neighbor's son got arrested 2 years ago. Rowan looked up from his chair. "You see that?" "Yeah," I said, barely above a whisper. The limo came to a gentle stop near the side entrance, its engine cut off with the kind of finality that made my chest tighten. Then the back door opened. A woman stepped out. She was tall, maybe mid-60s, with silver-streaked hair and a navy coat that screamed tailored, not off the rack. She didn't look lost. She didn't look confused. She looked intentional. Opal clutched my sleeve. "Mom, she's coming here." The woman walked with grace, not the hurried kind of someone running late, but the sort of pace that made you pause and wonder what she knew that you didn't. She stopped just outside the garage and knocked gently on the side door. 3 soft taps. I opened it halfway. The cold air poured in, but she didn't flinch. "Excuse me," she said, voice calm and low. "I'm looking for Marla Wexley." It's strange how your own name can feel like a gift when spoken by someone who actually means it. "That's me," I answered. She took one small step forward. "I'm Helene Miles." There was a beat of silence as her name landed. I'd heard it before. On newsletters, on conference flyers, on a grant application I didn't finish 2 years ago because I couldn't afford to take time off work to attend the info session. "I'm co-founder of Women Who Lift," she added. "I believe we met once, though I don't think you knew who I was." I blinked. "I'm sorry, About 5 years ago," she continued. "Winter. You were volunteering at the Oakley shelter. My mother, she didn't speak much English. She was trying to apply for Medicaid, and everyone was too busy or too tired. But you sat with her. You translated using Google on your phone. You held her hand when she got overwhelmed." I stared at her, memory trickling back like slow light through blinds. "My mother passed away last spring," Helene said, eyes steady. "But before she died, she made me promise to find the young woman who helped her when no one else did." My breath caught. I had no idea what to say. "You didn't ask for anything," she added, "but you made space for someone no one else saw. And now, I'd like to do the same for you." Behind her, I saw Judith's face in the window, mouth slightly open. Brielle hovered beside her, arms crossed. "I'm sorry, why now?" I asked. Careful, guarded. Helene smiled. "Because our annual summit is coming up, and we need a keynote speaker, someone who understands visibility, not because she chases the spotlight, but because she's been made to live without one." I felt my knees almost give. Not from shock, but from the quiet pressure of being seen. "We'll cover travel, childcare, accommodations," she said. "And we'd like to discuss a publishing deal for your essays. You have a voice, Marla, and I think a lot of women need to hear it." Rowan stood next to me now. Opal held onto my hand tighter. I started, then stopped. My eyes darted back toward the house. Judith's expression was unreadable. Brielle looked frozen, as if she couldn't quite process what she was witnessing. I turned back to Helene. Why here? Why come all the way? I called the organization you used to write for, she explained. They gave me your last known address. I drove here, thinking I might catch you before the day ended. The corners of her lips lifted. And I figured, if someone's been forced into the garage, it says more about the house than it does about them. That was it. That sentence. That truth. I felt something click into place inside me that had been rattling loose for years. I didn't look back at the window again. Okay, I said. Yes, I'll do it. Helene reached into her coat and handed me a small folder. Details, a letter, a business card. And then she said it again, like she'd practiced. Marla. My name, said clearly, with purpose. You're not invisible. You never were. They just stopped looking. Opal's eyes sparkled. Rowan stood a little taller. For once, I said slowly, the door opened for me, and not because I knocked. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my presence. That's what kept repeating in my head as we walked back into the house. The door had barely clicked behind us when the stillness of the garage was replaced by the familiar buzz inside. The sound of wine glasses clinking, laughter rehearsed, and words that felt polished enough to bruise. Rowan was just ahead of me, hands tucked into his hoodie. Opal still held Helene's folder like it was sacred. I hadn't told them yet what it meant or how big it really was. I didn't need to. They knew something had changed. I could feel it in the way Rowan walked straighter, and Opal held my hand without asking. We were only supposed to grab our coats and leave, but curiosity slowed me down near the hallway that led to the main living room. That hallway. I'd avoided it for years. It was where Judith hung her legacy, the framed family portraits arranged in perfect symmetry, updated annually, like seasonal decorations. I paused in front of the newest edition. A large photo, carefully centered, taken in early autumn, judging by the color of the leaves in the background. Everyone was there. Brielle's family, of course. Her husband Clayton, with his hand possessively on her shoulder. Their 3 kids, in matching outfits. Judith and Arnold sat in front, arms resting gently on their knees, like royalty in retirement. Smiling, polished, permanent. Except we weren't in it. Not me, not Rowan, not Opal. It wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation. You couldn't make it that day, remember? Judith's voice broke through behind me, casual, as if she'd wandered in by accident. I turned slightly. She was holding a half-filled wine glass, standing with one foot tilted, like she might walk away if the conversation got uncomfortable. I remember, I said, my voice even. It was scheduled for a Thursday. You told me on a Wednesday night. She raised an eyebrow, like that little detail had slipped her mind. We didn't think it'd be a big deal. Of course not. She didn't reply, just smiled that polite, dismissive way of hers, and walked off toward the kitchen. A few minutes later, we found ourselves in the dining room again, right as Brielle stood up with a glass in hand. I just want to thank everyone for being here today, she said, all polished charm. This family means everything to me. We're not perfect, but we show up. That counts for something. A few heads nodded. Ah, and, well, she added with a chuckle, even Marla's little writing project got us some attention this year. Who knew trauma blogs could go so far? Laughter rippled through the room like static. Light, uncomfortable. The kind of laugh people do when they know they shouldn't, but they want to stay on the right side of the joke. I raised my glass and stood. Pain sells when it's real, I said. I suppose that's why you've never published. Silence. Rowan didn't blink. Opal just reached for my hand under the table. Clayton cleared his throat. Judith's lips pressed together. Brielle froze, her mouth open just enough to show her teeth, but not form words. I sat back down slowly, still holding my glass. No one said anything for a solid 10 seconds. That night, after the air had thinned out and the guests trickled down to just family, I found my father in the garage. He was moving empty boxes around, pretending to be helpful. He looked surprised when I walked in. Need something? He asked. Yes, I said. The truth. He paused. Okay. That house on Crescent View, I said. The one I helped renovate, paid the initial taxes on, signed as a co-owner when Brielle and Clayton couldn't qualify a loan. He looked uncomfortable. What about it? I checked the records. My name's not on it anymore. His shoulders dropped. We moved it into Brielle's name last year. Tax purposes. You weren't involved anymore. I nodded once. So I didn't just disappear from your photos. You made it official. Marla. You erased me, on paper. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I'm not here to fight, Dad. I just needed to hear it. Out loud. So I know I'm not making it up. I turned and walked out, leaving the smell of cardboard and stale holiday leftovers behind me. In the garage, I found Rowan and Opal already curled up on the worn couch we'd been using. The space felt smaller than it had a few hours ago. Or maybe we just didn't fit into it anymore. I didn't explain what had just happened. Instead, I looked at Rowan and asked, "What would you build if no one gave you a place at the table?" He shrugged. "Our own table, bigger." I smiled. That was enough. Now they're trying to drag chairs in. But it's too late. I'm already building something better. The morning after Helene left, the air in the house shifted. But not in the way you'd expect after a life-changing offer. It didn't feel celebratory. It felt staged. Like someone had repainted the set overnight, but left the actors reading the same tired lines. Judith approached first, holding a mug of herbal tea she hadn't touched. "Marla," she said, tone unnaturally smooth. "I just want to say I'm proud of you. Really. This whole thing, it's a big deal." She waited for me to say thank you. I didn't. "And," she continued, forcing a smile, maybe there's a way we can all be part of it." That's when Brielle walked in, voice too bright. "Yes! I was just telling Mom. We should do something joint. A feature maybe. Sisters. Strong women. A family legacy." I blinked. "A joint interview," she repeated, as if I hadn't understood. "We tell the story of how we grew up together, how we supported each other. A full circle moment." I stared at her. "You mean the version where you erase what actually happened and pose for the credit photo?" Brielle laughed. "But it was the brittle kind." "Come on, Marla, don't be dramatic. The public loves a good redemption arc." "I'm not your redemption," I said evenly. "I'm the chapter you tried to rip out, and now you want it back because people started reading." Judith cleared her throat. "Let's not do this now." "Of course not," I said. "Not when it's inconvenient." Neither of them said anything else, and I didn't wait for them to recover. That afternoon, there was a cousins' brunch in the backyard. Matching outfits, balloons. Brielle had even hired a photographer to capture candid moments. I wasn't invited to help. That much was clear. But Opal saw the other kids being herded together for a photo and naturally walked toward them. She was holding a flower crown she made out of dandelions and ribbon from a gift bag. Her hair was curled that morning. She'd asked me to do it. Just as she stepped toward the group, Judith reached out and stopped her with one hand. "This one is just for the cousins this time," she said. Opal blinked up at her, unsure. I was already walking toward them. Not fast, just steady. "Opal," I said, "come on." She didn't argue, just slipped her hand into mine and followed me out of the frame. I didn't say anything to Judith. I didn't need to. Her eyes said it all. This was her version of keeping the family narrative tidy. Keep it clean, keep it filtered. We left the brunch early. On the drive back, no one spoke. Opal stared out the window. Rowan fiddled with the strap of his backpack. Once we got home, I didn't collapse onto the couch like I usually did. I grabbed my laptop. I opened a new document. Title: Building a Table Without Permission. Rowan walked past, paused at the sight of the title, then nodded once before heading to his room. Opal came in a few minutes later and sat beside me. She laid her head on my shoulder. "Are we still part of the family?" she asked. I turned to her. We never stopped being a family. They just stopped seeing it. Can we make our own? I smiled, kissed her forehead. We already are. Later that week, I emailed Helene, confirmed my slot for the keynote, sent her a working draft of the speech, attached a few blog samples, included a note at the bottom. No joint interviews, no family legacy angle. I'm not a brand. I'm a person who survived them. She replied 3 hours later. Understood. You're the story, not the backdrop. The next morning, Brielle called. I let it ring. Then she texted, We're organizing a watch party for your summit speech. Want to make it a full family thing? I replied simply, no. And that silence, that's how I knew they finally heard me. I didn't plan to check my phone first thing the next morning, but when I saw the screen glow before the sun even cracked through the blinds, I knew something was off. 2 missed calls from a neighbor, 3 texts from a woman I hadn't spoken to since Rowan was in diapers. And then, the tag. Someone had posted about me, publicly. I opened the Facebook link and there it was. A post from Judith, already shared 73 times by people with names like Linda M. from First Baptist and Janice L., prayer warrior. The caption sat heavy at the top, right under a photo of me in middle school, braces and bangs and all. Our daughter Marla has forgotten where she came from. We supported her dreams, gave her everything we had. But now that she's found success, she's cut off her own family. Sometimes fame changes people, and not always for the better. Beneath it, she'd included a blurry photo taken from behind a curtain. It was me and the kids in the garage, eating off paper plates. The angle made it look like we'd chosen to be there, like it was some quiet moment of reflection, not exile. The comments poured in. She should be ashamed. Sad what happens to kids these days when they get too big for their roots. You never stop being a mother, no matter how old they get. I put the phone down and walked to the kitchen. Poured coffee with a hand that didn't shake, but only because I refused to let it. I took 1 sip, set the mug down, and leaned against the counter. Judith didn't just twist the story, she weaponized it. By noon, the post had spread across 3 community groups. 1 local news blog even reposted it, adding the headline, Keynote Speaker's Family Speaks Out. She abandoned us. Brielle texted that afternoon. We didn't want it to come to this, but maybe next time, think before shutting people out. I didn't answer. I looked at Opal, curled on the couch with her book, and then at Rowan, who was reading the comments over my shoulder. You gonna say something? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, just not the way they expect. That night, after dinner, I sat down at my desk and opened a blank post. I didn't write paragraphs. I didn't explain. I let the evidence speak. First, the photo. Opal, sitting on a plastic crate in the garage, holding a slice of pumpkin pie on a paper plate, looking right at the camera. Her eyes calm, her shoulders squared. Then, a screenshot of the family group chat I'd never been added to. Then, a clip of the property deed, my name missing from the title I'd helped pay into. And finally, a short video of Rowan from last year. He was standing in our tiny apartment, looking around proudly. It's not little, he said. It's just enough. My caption was short. This is not abandonment. This is protection. I didn't walk away from family. I walked away from harm. I hit post, logged out. By morning, the ripple had turned into a wave. Comments flowed in, hundreds of them. Strangers, neighbors, old friends I hadn't heard from since college. I was the one in the garage, too. My mother-in-law did the same to me. You're not alone. Judith's post was deleted by lunch. Brielle didn't reach out again. And yet, the real shift wasn't public. It wasn't about claps or clicks. It was about Opal walking into the kitchen that night and saying, Everyone's talking about you. Are they? Yeah, she said, but you don't look scared. I smiled. That's because I'm not. She tilted her head. Will Grandma be mad? Probably, I said. But that's hers to carry. Rowan chimed in from the other room. People only get mad when you stop letting them rewrite your story. And that was the moment I knew I didn't need a rebuttal. I didn't need an apology. I had the truth. I had my children. And for the first time, I had a voice that didn't tremble. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just told the truth loud enough they had to whisper. And for the first time, that was enough. A week had passed since the post, the one where I told the truth, finally, in my own words. It was still being shared, though I'd stopped checking the numbers. Rowan had shown me once or twice, comments, messages from strangers. But I'd quietly asked him not to bring it up anymore. It wasn't about the response. It was about the release. Early Monday morning, while the house was still quiet and the sun barely warming the front steps, I opened my phone and saw a notification from an old email address I rarely checked anymore. It was Judith. Subject, Hope. I stared at it for a long moment before opening the message. Hope you're well? Miss you sometimes? That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a line, vague enough to mean anything and safe enough to mean nothing. I closed the email. I didn't respond right away. I made coffee, fed Opal, packed Rowan's lunch, walked the recycling out to the curb. By the time I sat down again, the email had slipped to the bottom of the inbox, buried under coupons and auto-replies. That evening, once the kids were asleep, I finally replied. We're doing well. Hope you are too. I didn't ask how she was. I didn't say I missed her. Not because I didn't feel something, but because not every feeling deserves a response. Thanksgiving came around again, our first one without them. I didn't tell the kids we weren't going. They didn't ask. That silence was mutual, expected, freeing. We hosted instead. It wasn't formal. There were no place cards, no matching napkins, no Pinterest boards involved. Just 2 card tables pushed together, floor cushions, secondhand chairs. A neighbor brought sweet potatoes. A retired librarian I used to work with showed up with cornbread. One of Opal's friends and her mom came too, the one who just got out of a rough divorce and was figuring things out meal by meal. We passed plates, we told bad jokes, someone's dog knocked over the cranberry sauce, and nobody cared. Opal leaned into me mid-meal and said, This is better than Grandma's house. Rowan looked up and added, It's real, that's why. And he was right. 2 weeks later, I stood backstage at the Women Who Lift Summit. My palms weren't sweating, my heart wasn't racing. I was ready. When they called my name, I stepped out under the lights and looked out at the sea of women. Young, old, weary, defiant. I didn't bring up names. I didn't mention garages or paper plates or the feeling of being photographed out of history. Instead, I said this. Sometimes people will push you out of the room so hard, they don't realize they've shoved you straight into your purpose. You land in the cold, in the silence, with no welcome sign. But somehow, it's warmer than where you came from, because it's yours, and because no one gets to take that from you again. The room was quiet for a moment. Then someone stood, and then another, and then all of them. I didn't cry. I didn't smile big for the cameras. I just breathed it in, let it settle deep. Later, Helene found me backstage. She didn't say much, just hugged me. The kind of hug that doesn't require words, because it's earned in knowing. Meanwhile, across town, Brielle's law firm quietly pulled their sponsorship from a national conference. Not because of my post, but because silence speaks volumes when you've built your brand on integrity. Judith hadn't hosted a family event since last Christmas. No one said why. But I knew. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. They weren't destroyed. But their power to define me? That was gone. The following weekend, Opal handed me a drawing. 3 people sitting at a picnic table. Crooked legs, uneven cups, big smiles. She pointed. I drew our family. Underneath, in block letters, she'd written, We're not small, we're just enough. And that's when I understood something I'd spent years unlearning. Healing isn't about going back to what hurt you and hoping it changed. It's about leaving, choosing peace, even when nobody hands it to you. I didn't win. I just stopped needing to.